Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of our Lunchtime Linkup. I'm Cherise Luter, your host, and our Lunchtime Linkup is a time that we talk with our DivInc community about how we are impacting the tech ecosystem with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind. And right now, we are in the middle of a series called Meet the Founder, where we are introducing our community to our social justice tech cohort for the spring 2022 semester, powered by Ascension. And we are in part two. And today we have Lawrence Humphrey, who is the founder of Tech Can Do Better. And I'm going to have Lawrence talk about himself, his founding journey, and what Tech Can Do Better does. And let's get into it. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you, Cherise. So in 2020, when I was cooped up inside and watching all of the social inequities happen, I founded Tech Can Do Better in response to the collective outrage and hysteria from the private sector, specifically the tech industry, about what to do in order to achieve systemic equity in the tech industry. We released, in essence, a white paper, hosted a dozen community calls, and ended up being viewed over hundreds of thousands of times between Fast Company, Spectrum News, Hire.com. And that's where we realized we tapped into something that we frankly didn't expect. And we saw that there was just a huge appetite for the everyday employee, managers, knowledge workers, and independent contributors for what they could be doing to drive systemic change within their own companies. So that's the North Star, if you will. How do we achieve systemic equity within the industry? These systemic issues are huge. And we came into DivInc trying to figure out how can we scale what we have done with this concierge model, connecting these disparate pieces across the industry to facilitate knowledge sharing. So that grounds and colors some of the backstory for how we came into DivInc and what we're hoping to solve.
Yeah. So can you tell us exactly what Tech Can Do Better does? What exactly is I mean, I think we can all kind of guess what the problem is that you're solving, but can you just give us an idea of what exactly it does and what the problem is that you're solving?
Yeah, and that's a really great question, and it's one that we spent the past few weeks
Right.
articulating. So the how Tech Can Do Better started out with the community calls is bringing together these different players, so managers within this enterprise over here, facilitate knowledge sharing. And it was a concierge crowdsourced consulting model, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that had a lot of appetite. And we, like I mentioned, we're trying to figure out how to scale this experience. And in the current manifestation of where we are in our product journey, we want to create a digital hub for this crowdsourced consulting. In essence, and excuse my developer background, quick tangent. I use GitHub. I love GitHub. GitHub is a platform for hosting, collaborating, creating, sharing developer best practices and solutions to problems. So in essence, developers go here to collaborate on developer problems. Designers go to Figma to collaborate on design problems. Where do leaders and knowledge workers go to collaborate on these soft, like knowledge worker problems?
Right.
That is the platform that we are creating for workers and folks in the tech community and private sector more broadly.
Got it. Okay, that's a really great way to put it. That there just really was no place, no singular space that they could go to. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about with the social impact and even just the name of our social justice tech accelerator. What exactly is that, and what exactly? How would you define that to the uninitiated? And then how do you measure that? How do you, say, okay, this is what we do and this is how we do it. But then how do you say, all right, we did it, and put that up. So let's start with just, how would you define that? And then transition it into a thriving business that has that kind of, those the successes that you're measuring.
Yeah, that's a great question, and frankly, maybe above my pay grade, but I'll swing for the fences here. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We're almost to demo day, so I think you're good.
Yeah. So I started with the tethering statement. I am trying to improve the qualitative and quantitative experience for underrepresented Black and brown folks in the tech industry. That's the macro statement. And then you can begin to unpack the specific pieces. So what are the quantitative side of things? That's the easier one to measure and more directly answers your question. So some metrics that I look at are parity in the industry and our difference in parity. So no surprise, tech and the private sector looks nothing like the general population, with around 15% being Black. And if you're lucky, maybe you have like 2% of the tech industry being Black. Huge parity or disparities. With respect to disparity, all the same, other Black and brown groups. And not only making sure that the company is at that at parity, but homogeneously through the company, so up to the executive ranks. So that's the quantitative side. Then you can look at things like attrition. You can look at pay gaps, things like that. But the tougher one that I'm still figuring out how to wrap my mind around, I know people are out there doing it with Indeed, the qualitative side. So what does it mean for Black and brown and just in general other employees, any employee, to come to work and feel like they have a great qualitative experience there? And it is strongly correlated with known things: a sense of belonging, feeling valued by managers, feeling valued by the company, more esoteric things, but you can begin breaking that down even further in terms of, I feel like my manager listens to me, I feel like my input is heard. And in Tech Can Do Better, and in this new manifestation of our company, this new chapter, we are beginning teasing that out in our own impact metrics. So happiness in the workplace and like employee engagement are some of the ones that are being tracked now. It is a moderate proxy for the qualitative experience in the workplace, but that's it. Once you begin breaking it out into quantitative and qualitative, it helps us track and wrap our minds around this.
Okay, so you mentioned something a couple of seconds ago. A new phase, a new chapter. I was going to save it for later, but you mentioned, so now I have to. Now it just.
Yeah, I kind of underhanded it too.
So, recently you did kind of, in your words, flip the switch on some things that I think were a part of your accelerator journey, and the things that you were learning throughout about your customers, about the needs that you were finding were the true needs of those customers. And part of that resulted in a bit of a pivot. And I'm going to be quiet now and let you talk a little about it. But yeah, tell us a little bit about this new phase that you just mentioned, and we're going to get into how you got to that point.
Yeah, I think it helps by starting off with where collectively the world was, where we were in 2020 when Tech Can Do Better was founded.
Yeah.
It was a very austere time. It was very severe. It was, there was no, it was, a pretty, in many respects of the word, dark time, right?
Yeah.
And in our language and our brand expression and a lot of the ways that we carried ourselves and went about achieving our mission, it was very heavy, for lack of a better term.
No, yeah, I think that's the term for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we found over time, as the world opened back up, as we saw how people were responding to our brand, that, and especially when we get into the target demographics of who was coming to the community calls, engaging with our work, we saw this difference in how it was resonating with them. There was that piece of it. Also, as a part of our journey, when we were exploring how do we actually achieve systemic change in the tech industry, our initial impression was to go the nonprofit route, which, like nonprofit services, I do consulting inside, or I have experience consulting inside of IBM, and that's just where I felt kind of comfortable, even though nonprofit felt uncomfortable. And it was just through a lot of soul searching and a lot of just hearing how users were, like the feedback that we were getting from our brand and what it was doing. It didn't feel like a good fit anymore, both in brand expression, and it had a lot of baggage from we were doing actual tactical consulting. And if anything, my background is in computer science and design. I'm a product person. I feel comfortable doing product. And even more existentially, the best way in my mind to enact change is to lead by example. And I wanted to create a company, a tech company, that was living the values that I was espousing, and also creating solutions to scale what I captured in Tech Can Do Better, that first part of it. So there were, that's where we're coming from, this heaviness, this, us trying to figure out where we fit in the world as a nonprofit. And now we're trying to lead by example. The world is in a different place. It's in a lighter place. I think that having such a heavy brand for conversations that are innately tough, it doesn't feel like the most conducive to vulnerable conversations and the
Got it.
true
Yeah.
heart and mind change.
So
Yep.
are you ready to say the new name?
Yeah.
Ready?
I don't know if we're gonna get a drum roll in post or something.
Yeah. Then okay. Yeah, I'll give you a drum roll.
Pearl.
Pearl. Okay.
Hmm.
So tell us, how did you come to that? I definitely can see the shift to something more light, something more, even, dare I say, hopeful.
Hmm.
But yeah, you tell us, how did you get to that? How did you make that shift to that word?
Yeah. So there were a couple constraints that I had in my mind. So Tech Can Do Better was a mouthful. I mean, a lot of people love the name, but you don't see big tech companies, Tech Can Do Better, 4 words, 1 word. Come on, it's sexier that way. And so that's like my glib answer just right off the bat. But if you think about what we're trying to do through our solution, is we are offering the pearls of wisdom from
Uh-huh.
from one person to another. Also, interestingly enough, there are these other constraints where pearlescent came to mind. As a person, I get very uncomfortable with dichotomies and blacks and whites, and I think about things more as a spectrum, and pearls are the organic expression of capturing spectrums and prismatic and the in betweens. And it is literally a gem created through like an irritating process, like oysters, and they create this irritant,
Oh, I've seen
and
what
then
you
it's like,
did there.
yeah, and it's like, oh, we have this beautiful thing because of like this like really
Uncomfortable.
grueling process.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm liking that.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you can see it. I got the pearl earrings too.
Stay on brand in all ways, shapes, and forms.
Hmm.
What was as you were rolling it out, I'm sure within your organization, and your kind of insiders, and you have a good slate of advisors as well. If you see on your website, as you were rolling it out, do you feel like the reaction was what you were hoping for? Were there any
Yeah.
surprises? What was it like to roll that out? It's got to be a bit of a nerve-wracking moment.
Oh, and I mean, I rolled it out to close friends, and some of whom would pat me on the back, regardless. Some of whom are like, "Oh yeah, they would tell me if something were off," and like, "Oh, that's cool though." It still is very nerve-wracking. We're gonna flip the switch, but at this time, for the people on the recording,
Yeah.
the world doesn't know about this yet, so I am a little anxious to see how the world responds to it. But I suspect, and especially given and we went through a General Assembly boot camp, I think it was last year,
Mhm.
where we got feedback from that cohort, and they did their own user research, that the brand was just very dark, very serious, and it was kind of turning people off. And I suspect that this allows us to have more harder conversations in a lighter breath, and it just feels more. Not to say that Tech Can Do Better in its past manifestation was me. I can I very much enjoy my very dark, austere, but in general, I like to think that I have more of a lighter persona anyway. So we're gonna see though. We're gonna let the market decide, if you will.
Um, I did want to ask about your personal journey. So
Mm.
we are moving into our phase of prepping for demo day. where all of our cohort members are going to be doing their pitches and begin the process of moving into seeking fund or doing fundraising and seeking investment. And I wonder, we've kind of just heard a lot about the changes that happened with your organization. And I'd like to know, what kind of changes did you experience as a person, as a founder in this entire process? What does that look like? And what were the outcomes with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny. I think a lot about leadership, and because that's our brand, effectively, like crafting better leaders and better managers. And so much about this process has been a mirror to myself. And I've seen the areas, and I'm even better diagnosing the areas for where I'm strong and where I need work, and maybe areas where it just will innately always be a weakness. So, for instance, an anecdote: my co-founder and I, we're very similar in a lot of ways, but very different in some key ways. So, me being very just like type A, this is deadline, we have to hit this deadline, being very, very like, this is where we're going, and this manifests, and I'm sure maybe even some people in the cohort might see how I don't know if this is, uh, I don't know if we can censor it out, but my co-founder said that people who are very passionate and people who are, a-holes, they kind of move very similar. And I worry that that's the tightrope that I'm walking. So I'm that, this process for me is figuring out the ways in which I need to find people to offset some of those weaknesses. And I think she does a great job of offsetting, like, all right, we got to focus on the people. We have to make sure the culture is fun and it's not just, Lawrence going crazy, putting his head down and only getting results, but at the expense of company culture, if you will. Um, and things that I just do innately well. And being around so many other awesome people in the cohort, I get to see the different flavors of leaders and what I want to grab from others and what's working for others. Last thing I'll say is, I believe that you can't be what you can't see. And this experience for me has shown me the different kinds of ways to be not only a founder, but a Black founder, a relatively young founder, what's working for people, and where I can just lean into my most authentic self. So I know that's really high level. It's one of those things I don't think is ever done, but I,
Yeah, kind of like building your company. It's you're in a constant state of ideation, even for yourself. And every day is a moment where you're going to learn something new and be able to incorporate that into your strategy, even for you. Um, so you a second ago you mentioned the working with the cohort, and as you know, and as many people know, DivInc, we do a lot of work when it comes to when we select our cohort, making sure that because of the nature of the companies and the founders, that there's a true collaboration that happens in the room where everyone is learning and leading all at the same time. And so I'd love to hear your experience with that, with being in the room with all the other founders. You mentioned a second ago it gave you a few new ways that you could see what a founder looks like,
mhm.
and what kind of faces are attached to the tech industry, outside of the norm, or the face that we're all expecting and assuming you would normally see. So yeah, how has that been, and what was that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone in the cohort has their own specific, swagger, which is really cool. I mean, like, not only how they carry themselves, which I learn a lot from, but what they're really good at. So Misha, who is behind the scenes here, is just so incredibly plugged and just so, like, brings not only her expertise, but brings her like full self wherever she goes, like not at the expense of any sort of professionalism, which is awesome. I mean, she sends all sorts of resources my way all the time, which is, I think that's one of my weaknesses, is knowing what's going on in the zeitgeist. So I need someone like her around. And then there are people like, Tosha in the program. She and I have talked about how she is, because she's very, very good at tracking data and has a great system with her co-founders of, all right, let's make sure we're on a weekly basis hitting our numbers. What do we need to change? There is Alejandro, who's further and actually has a tangible product and has told me some of his incorporation, like missteps, what he would do differently. Sumeda gives me advice, especially as it relates to how I pitch. And, we trade stories there. And I feel like and in general, as a person, I'm not one to give unsolicited advice. I don't like doing that stuff. So when people ask me for feedback, and it's typically been about the design angle, like how to visually tell a story instead of just like in words.
Yeah.
And some of the storytelling pieces, that's been really fun with some of the members in the cohort, just getting to play into my expertise a little bit. But that's a short story. Everyone, and especially, and I think it's been said that I was at the earliest point in the cohort. So I feel like I have a lot of learning to do, and I've been trying to give something to people when I can.
Yeah. Speaking of, we've been following your series on Medium, where you've been kind of doing recaps of your experience each week and key takeaways and things that your mentors have, pearls of wisdom. I'm going to start using that. That your mentors have shared and how you're utilizing their expertise and putting those pearls into practice. And I noticed that one thing that you talked a lot about was the process of finding out what exactly your customer wanted, needed, and then translating that into true strategy. And I think that ability to data mine, and you mentioned Tosha's really great at that. The ability to data mine really sets people apart, and I really feel, because that is what allows you to know that you are on the right trajectory that matches the needs, and the value that you're adding is truly valuable to your customers. So what was that like? It seemed like that was one of the biggest takeaways in a lot of your different weeks was, learning about what your customer needs and then translating that in.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the name change probably would be a huge piece of that, but what other things did you learn, and other things that you had to put into action?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like in some ways I had a leg up because of my design background. And
Ah,
they, instill into you that you need to figure out who your users are, what their pain points are. But what I'll say in a cohort and having to start this business is that it takes it from this theory and this like, oh, this thing that you have to do, to this now makes it real. And my time and my money and other people's money are dependent on me solving the real problem and not getting fixated on the solution, as everyone says, but
mhm.
figuring out who the people are and what the problems are. So, in this process, what I'm learning is just how quickly that iteration has to be. And it's like, not something we're going to go in the lab and think about it for a while. We make a guess and we go and talk to people, and it's like, oh, did it? That's not at all what I expected. I don't think this is resonating. Like, let's tweak it a little bit and see what happens. But the cycles are a very, very, very new. I mean, you can get comfortable in a big corporate setting with longer timelines, but here it's like you got to learn fast.
Yeah.
And that's one big takeaway. And also, it just feels so far more visceral when this is my baby and my money and other people's money, riding on the fact that I can find repeatability. I demonstrate something that works, and I don't build some solution that, I'm not a sandwich looking for a picnic or a hammer looking for a nail. It's like I put up the party streamers and everyone's coming to me instead of me looking for the party,
Yeah.
so
Wow, I like
that's
that.
I know
I
it's
might use
conceptual.
that. I'll give you credit, but I might use that. That's a good way to put it. but but okay, so I feel like usually at the end I ask, what's the most exciting thing that people can look forward to? I think we may have unveiled it a few minutes ago, but I do want to ask, what's the biggest thing that you want people to know is a part of your next phase going into demo day on April 21st? and how can we support you in that next phase, and what can we do to make sure that we're playing a part in you moving into that phase as strong as possible.
Yeah, so absolutely check out our website, check out our rebrand. So it's going to, I think the link is going to be in the caption. And fundamentally, just engage with us. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're a knowledge worker, join, ask us a question. We don't want to leave you hanging in the meantime. And we do have some expertise, especially as it pertains to tactical DEI changes in companies. But
Yeah.
we will hunt down the question, and we will optionally connect you with the person that has the expertise, and not some esoteric thought leader, but people who are actually making the changes and making it work. So join our wait list, look at our website, and figuring it and share it among people who might have questions among your peer groups.
Awesome. Well, as we said before, Demo Day is coming up on April 21st in Austin, and you will be able to see Lawrence. You'll be able to see all of our spring 2022 social justice tech cohort, and you'll be able to see more about hear more about them, meet them in person, talk to them, and get to know them even more. And so sign up to be at Demo Day in Austin, and we'll also have a watch party at our Houston office at the Ion. So you'll be able to watch with all of us or be there in person in Austin on the 21st. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for giving us your time. I know this is a busy moment for you. So thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing everything that you're doing. And I do want to say one special thanks to our title sponsor, Ascension. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to bring all this together. So special thank you to you all. And the next episode's coming up soon. So we'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.